All right, hello everyone. My name is Grace Warner. I'm part of the Wide Horizons Nature Program,
And I'm Grant Terrell. I'm also part of the Wide Horizons Nature Program.
and we're going to be talking to y'all about rainforest reptiles and what makes them different than other reptiles in the world.
So can anybody tell me what makes up a reptile? Reptiles live on land, they're cold-blooded, they have scaly skin, and most lay eggs. And we say most because there are some sorts of rattlesnakes that actually give live birth, which means they give birth to actual babies instead of eggs.
And reptiles are just things like lizards, turtles, tortoises, alligators, snakes, all that kind of stuff. And sometimes reptiles and amphibians get confused with each other. And can anyone tell us what an amphibian is? So amphibians spend half of their lives underwater breathing through gills and the other half on land breathing through lungs. They are cold-blooded like reptiles, but they don't have any scales. They have smooth, kind of slimy skin, and they lay their eggs underwater. And amphibians are things like frogs, toads, salamanders, axolotls, all that kind of stuff. And next we're going to talk about something called adaptations. And adaptations, it looks kind of like a weird word, but it's a fancy word for change. And the longer meaning is when an animal's body changes to better fit its environment. And a really good example of that would be a chameleon. Chameleons have the ability to change their body's skin color, and that can help them blend in with things. So right now, the one in this picture is kind of like a greenish color, so it would kind of blend in with leaves.
So can anybody tell us what the word habitat means? An animal's habitat is its natural home. The habitat for many reptiles is actually in the rainforest, and most of the reptiles we'll talk about today have a habitat in the rainforest as well.
And rainforests are just really hot forests that get a lot of rainfall. They're home to many different trees and animals, and especially lots of reptiles. And right here is a map of all of the rainforests in the world. Where all the green is where all of the rainforests are. And y'all might be able to see that they're located in like one little central part, and they're located around a thing called the equator. And that is really hot along the equator, and it gets a lot of rainfall, so it makes sense why there is a lot of rainforest there. So our first rainforest reptile we're going to talk about is the emerald tree boa. And the emerald tree boas, they're a really unique snake because they spend almost all of their time coiled up in trees, just like the one in the picture, and they rarely touch the ground. They hang off of branches to get food, like small little lizards or frogs or something, and they can grow up to about 79 inches long.
Next, we'll talk about the flying dragon or the gliding lizard. And what makes these cool is that, as I'm sure you can see, they have some sort of a movable flap along their ribs that actually allows them to, if they were to jump off of a branch or a tree, they could actually glide to where they want to go. They can glide up to 25 feet, which is just a bit longer than a giraffe.
And next is the common iguana. And common iguanas have really long fingers and claws that they use to grab tree branches, and it can help them climb trees. They often hop from branch to branch just to get to places faster, and they can climb almost as high as 100 feet, which is the length of an airplane.
Uh-oh. So next we'll talk about the panther chameleon, and as I'm sure you guys know, panther chameleons can actually change the color of their skin. Along with that, they can jump from place to place to get away from predators or to find food, and they have tongues that are around 14 inches long. And despite what some people might believe, it actually takes around 30 seconds to a minute for them to fully change color.
And our last rainforest reptile we're going to talk about is the crested gecko. And crested geckos, they have pretty long tails that they kind of use like an extra leg that helps them hold on to branches and stay balanced. They often jump from branch to branch to get away from predators and get to places faster, and they have tiny little ridges on the bottom of their toes that you might be able to see in that picture, and those little ridges can help them stand on really slick things and prevent them from slipping and falling. And since it's really wet in the rainforest, it can help them without falling and hurting themselves.
So can anybody tell us what all these reptiles have in common? All these reptiles live in the rainforest. They have adapted to live in the rainforest. They can all climb trees, and they can all hang or jump off of branches to find food or shelter.
All right, so now I'm going to talk about what makes these reptiles different than other reptiles. And the rainforest reptiles live in a really wet place, while other reptiles live in dry places like a desert. And they are much better at climbing, while others are better at running. And we are going to compare a couple different types of reptiles. The first one is two different types of iguanas. And the green one, that is the green iguana that we talked about earlier, it lives in the rainforest, and it's a greenish color. So it kind of looks like the grass behind it, or if it was sitting in a tree, it would look like a clump of leaves. And it's also very big, and it has very muscular arms, which helps it pull itself up in tree branches. And the other iguana is a desert iguana, and it is kind of like a sandish color, and that helps it blend in with the sand behind it, and that can help it get away from hawks or snakes that might try to eat them. And they are also very, very good at running. Next, we are going to compare a couple different types of snakes, and the first one is the emerald tree boa that lives in the rainforest, and it spends almost all of its time coiled up on tree branches, just like the one in the picture. And if you were to walk by a tree with an emerald tree boa in it, you might not even notice that it's there because it's so very good at blending in. And the other one is a diamondback rattlesnake. And diamondback rattlesnakes are kind of like a sandish color, and that helps them blend in with the sand behind it, and that helps it get away from things like hawks that might try to eat them. And they also have something very unique to them, which is that rattle at the end of its tail that y'all might be able to see. And that rattle is kind of like a defense mechanism, and it can be used to warn really big things that might try to step on them, like cows or horses, that it's a very dangerous animal and it shouldn't be messed with.
So next we're going to play a little game. We're going to show you a close-up picture of some reptile skin, and you guys are going to tell us whether it lives in the desert or in the rainforest based on the coloring of the animal's skin.
So this one lives in the desert. And this one would be rainforest. This one would also be rainforest. This one would be desert. And this one would be rainforest. All right, so we have a little surprise for you. I have a little crested gecko here with me. His name is Blue. He's about 2.5 years old and about 5 inches long. And here he is, right here. And y'all might be able to see that he doesn't have a really long tail right here. Like I mentioned earlier, crested geckos, they have those tails that they use kind of like an extra leg, and it helps them keep their balance. But some lizards can actually drop their tails if they get scared or threatened. So Blue, in the crested geckos, they have the ability to drop their tails. And some lizards that can drop their tails, like skinks, they can regrow them, but crested geckos sadly cannot regrow their tails, so Blue isn't going to have a tail for the rest of his life. And he doesn't have any eyelids, so how we moisturize our eyes, if our eyes get kind of dry, we just blink, right? But since Blue doesn't have any eyelids, he can't blink. So what he would do is he takes his really long tongue and he will lick his eyelids to rehydrate them. And that would be pretty hard for us because our tongues aren't even long enough to do that. And here's another little view of Blue. He's trying to jump. All right, so I'm gonna put him back, and we just wanted to thank y'all for taking the time to watch our presentation, and we hope you learn more about rainforest reptiles.
Thank you.